What's up, y'all? It's Drewski, and I've teamed up with Mountain Dew to produce a hilarious new basketball podcast called The Dew Zone with Drewski. Learn the backstories of your favorite ballers and celebrities like Jamal Murray. Did you have like a favorite team? Was it the Raptors at the time or no? Was the Raptors even started around that time?
Come on, bro.
I ain't that old, fam. You talking like I'm 50.
Taylor Rooks, Asia Wilson, and many more. You won't want to miss this. Listen to The Dew Zone with Drewski on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey there. We at Blue Wire wanted to thank you for your continued support of this podcast. With over 90 podcasts across our network, we are committed to bringing you great content to fill that sports-shaped hole in your heart. To find more Blue Wire pods, search for us on iTunes or check out BlueWirePods.com. And remember, one day sports will return and it will be glorious. Thanks for listening. On to the show.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast.
For sure, bro. Like, it's kind of frustrating me when people talk about, oh, like, we wouldn't be able to survive in that generation.
Right.
And yada, yada, yada. But I'm watching that, like, I kind of want a piece of that, too. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? We've been in that. We've been in practice before. Like, you know how we get down.
I know. Listen, that's why I'm asking, because I know, because I literally used to, like, for the people, like, I used to foul him so much on purpose. And they wouldn't call foul. Like, they weren't going to call foul on me. And he used to get so like, yo, give me the ball more. Like, I'm like, yo, oh, my God. Like, most people would have quit. But, yo, he never quit. Yeah. And I was like, you know what I'm saying? The makings, like, I seen it in you early. And that's why, like, when I watched that, like, to me, like, people built off that. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. Like, yeah, it might change the game. But I love that, like, a lot of people, like, got that mentality. Like, I think survive in that era easily because you feel like that.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. We are back. I guess we're on a once every 2 week schedule right now. We're going to try and fix that in the future once we have more of a clear idea of what we can and cannot talk about going forward. My name is Mike. I'm here, as always, with Sam. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Mike. Apologies, guys, out there. We have been a little bit lazy. We're going to try to get back to more of a routine schedule. But the reason I'm excited today is because I just love putting a voice kind of to a Twitter account. And the guy we're bringing on today is just a staple of the Suns Twitter community, a guy who's been always very good to both of us and has been amazing with all of his analysis, and is most notably a draft guy. And neither of us are draft guys. We got plenty of time before the NBA draft. We don't even know when the NBA draft is going to be. So this will be one of many draft segments that we have. But it's only fitting to bring on someone of his caliber to start breaking down this upcoming draft class for us.
Yeah, that's right. And so joining us is Brandon, who runs the Zona Sports account on Twitter. Brandon, how are you doing?
What's up, guys? Appreciate that intro. Thanks for having me on. I'm a huge fan of your guys' podcast. You do an excellent job of producing, consistently enjoyable content, which I know it's not easy. And loved the last episode with Kellen. It was fun stuff. But yeah, I'm just excited to do this. Let's get started.
Awesome. Yeah, the initial idea was to have you on right before March Madness. And we were going to talk about who to watch in March Madness, if anyone, and trying to sort of hone our focus on like where the Suns are going to pick. It's gotten a little odd, of course, as we all know, the world has changed. We don't currently know exactly. The Suns are slated to pick 10th. Now, what I did want to just bring up real quick before we dive into the players to watch now on YouTube instead of March Madness. This will be who to look up on YouTube for Suns fans. I did want to mention that there is now, I heard this on the Bill Simmons podcast with Ryan Russillo, there's now a financial incentive for every team to get up to 70 games played. And the reason that is because the RSNs, which are regional sports networks, so for us in Arizona, it'd be Fox Sports Arizona. If the Suns season gets up to 70 games played, those regional sports networks have to pay out the entirety of the contract that they agreed to for the year. If it's any less than 70 games played, the NBA as a whole loses money. So there is a chance that the NBA works out some sort of scenario where the rest of the season is fully played out. So there's a chance that this draft positioning changes. I think that with this particular draft, and Brandon, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, it doesn't matter that much. I think that the where these guys are slotted in is so fluid. How similarly skilled or at the level that people are rating these players, it seems like anywhere after the first few picks, things can sort of slide dramatically between players. So it might not change as far as the players that we talk about that much. But just so you guys know, there could be some basketball on the horizon that could change where the Suns are picking. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to talk about some weird fanless NBA games taking place in Las Vegas or whatever the plan is. But let's get into it. Let's first talk about, I think, Brandon, what I want to talk to you about. Mm-hmm. There has been a lot of mock drafts or draft guides or whatever you want to call them online, as there always are this time of year. There is no consensus number one pick. So I guess the Suns are in the lottery. There's a chance, right? There's a chance that they can get the number one pick if things fall their way. Who do you have number one overall in the NBA draft for 2020? Who's your number one player?
Yeah, so right now I have LaMelo Ball, number one. Earlier in the year, I had Killian Hayes there, actually. He's my number two now, spoiler alert. But yeah, I'm just huge on Ball. He's got generational type passing and an elite handle to go with it. And at 6'7", it gives him like a unique vantage point to see over the defense and make some of these passes. He thrives in transition, just makes quick decisions. Like that's when he's most effective, is when he's not hesitating and he just kind of gets into his jumper with a quick release. Obviously there's the defensive concerns, but I also think those are a little bit overstated. Like people are acting like he's like Trae Young on that end. He's not. Like I don't think he'll be a good defender at any point, but at the very least, he can be average or slightly below average, and the value he's going to bring to your offense should offset that.
Brandon, I think there's sort of been a massive shift in just the way that scouts in general evaluate talent over the past half decade or so, and the expectations that we have out of our lottery picks. And because that's kind of the focus of where we are today, the Suns are, unless they trade the pick, which is something we could talk about, but most likely the Suns are going to have a lottery pick. Talk a little bit about your approach when it comes to scouting. What are your expectations of a lottery pick for the NBA, and kind of what are you looking at in these prospects that makes you say this guy's a surefire lottery talent, this guy's a top 5 talent, or even a top 1 or 2 talent?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think in every draft it's different, obviously, because you're dealing with different quality at each pick, and you're just trying to find the most value no matter where you're picking, and you're doing a lot of projecting, just seeing where these guys, where they fit, like which translatable skills they have. So I'm looking for someone with like a high IQ and high feel for the game. I think that's a very undervalued aspect, and you're looking for someone with an explosive first step. You need the ability to finish through contact. I look at, does this player absorb contact or does he avoid it? Shooting indicators. So obviously for shooting, their shot mechanics are very important, and shooting indicators to see whether or not they're that's going to translate are stuff like their touch, on floaters, long twos, free throw percentage, stuff like that. So they can they shoot off a live dribble? Can they hit pull ups? Just overall defensive awareness and steal and block rate are super important as well. So it's just finding a balance between all of these and just evaluating it as like a collective prospect.
Now, a lot of people consider this a weird draft. So there doesn't seem to be superstars in this draft, and as always, there could be some random guys that end up being much better than we anticipated. The most famous example in the past, of course, is Giannis Antetokounmpo being the best player in the NBA, picked, a lottery pick, but late in the lottery. What do you think? Do you think this is a weird draft? Do you think that it's top heavy at all, or do you think that there will be a lot of good NBA players, or do you think it's just a bad draft in general?
Oh yeah, there's going to be some random guy picked in like the late teens that's going to be like a star, and then I think the overall balance of this class is pretty weird. Like there's not a Zion or a Luka or like someone that's going to change your franchise, but there's a lot of quality role players, and at the top, my top 3, I think could all be pretty impactful players and have all-star potential. But outside of that, it's a crapshoot. Like, you're just going to be taking a gamble no matter where you pick. There's a lot of red flags with these guys, and you just kind of have to like sift through all that BS and just figure out, it's basically just a guessing game with this class. It's pretty unique class.
Who's the third? So you have LaMelo, you have Killian. Who's the third one?
Then I have Anthony Edwards as my third.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not like thrilled with the fit in Phoenix for him, but obviously, the reason I would be okay with it is just because of how desperately this team needs scoring and shot creation. So to me, all this talk about the strength of the draft class, right? It brings up a critical question, because I've heard some people float this take, and I don't personally know if I agree with it because I don't know enough about the draft class. But if you're willing to accept that this is kind of a weak class at the top, that there's not a franchise-altering player, but that maybe you can get a lot of value in that, say, 5 to 14 range, would you almost rather the Suns, like, that this wouldn't be the year the Suns win the lottery with their astronomically small odds to do it and get the number 1 pick, if you have to pay a player who you don't think is going to live up to that expectation a starting salary of $11 or $12 million a year, like the players who are getting picked in the top 3 do these days? Would you almost rather have the number 8, the number 9, the number 10 pick, or is that kind of crazy talk? No, it's a good point. I think, especially at the top of this draft, if you're taking a gamble on someone like LaMelo or Anthony, I don't think Killian's going to go top 3, just for the record. Wiseman's probably going to be someone that's going to be taken in the top 3 as well. But that's a different point. To answer your question, I think I would rather obviously pick top 3 just from a point of, I think it's good trade value. But if you're not if you're going to commit to that player fully, I'm pretty comfortable picking 10th right now. I think there's going to be a very undervalued player that drops to them there. And they're going to have their choices there. Having some flashbacks from previous drafts where, the board played out perfect and they passed on someone. Not going to mention any names, but, I think there's a very good chance in this class they're going to have a chance to draft someone pretty good at 10 if that's where they're picking.
So let's get into that then. So obviously, like I talked about, draft boards are all over the place. You can't really find consensus throughout even in the around 10 where the Suns are picking. But when you look at the players that are likely going to be there in that 10 range, that pick range, who do you look at as a player that would be the best fit with the Phoenix Suns, just initially?
So right off the bat, I think Tyrese Maxey really stands out for the Suns' specific needs right now, just because I think he's one of the best scoring guards in this class. He shot 29% from 3. I think he's going to be a much better shooter than that. He's shot a pretty high percentage from the free throw line. He has a nice touch, and his finishing was pretty insane. So he reminds me a little bit of like a Lou Williams type offensively, but he's not going to be a complete liability on defense. Like that's the major pro with him. So you can plug him in the Suns' second unit right now, and we saw how desperate they were for like anyone to score at times. So I think that's where he fits in. My favorite long-term prospect in this range would be Devin Vassell out of Florida State. Yeah, I'm all in on him right now. I'm actually having him number 5 on my board, which is pretty crazy high.
That is.
And that
from what
speaks, that speaks more to like this class than it does like how I actually value his impact, which is, him and Okongwu are my 4 and 5. And the reason I have them there is because I think they're both going to fill their roles out really well. And you're not going to be wasting a lot of money on someone that just completely busts. And like I said, that just speaks to where this class is as a whole.
So
I did not even know that was how to say Devin Vassell's last name, for the record. That's how little I knew. Yeah, I just assumed it was Vassell. And just to set the table a little bit, and sorry, Sam, to interrupt you here, but you just chose a Kentucky guard.
Am I for the Suns or what? Like,
Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey, for those who don't know, 6'3" guard from Kentucky, and he averaged 14 points a game. Devin Vassell, the player that I'm also currently in love with, just when I sort of read everything about them, is a 6'7" wing from Florida State. He's a sophomore. Could be a very good player as well. I just look at guys that sort of match the Mikal Bridges mold when you're drafting, and he's just one of those guys that does. I just look at the Suns as a team that has Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Why not just draft the best possible defenders at this point if that's the core that we're going with? But Sam, sorry, go ahead.
No, all good. I just kind of wanted to take us through a little process of elimination because you mentioned Okongwu. So first of all, you said you have LaMelo Ball 1, Killian Hayes 2, 3, Anthony Edwards, and then Okongwu 4. Where is Weissman on your board? And also, can we just toss out Okongwu and Weissman as even if these guys fell, there's no way the Suns would pick the 2 best center prospects in this draft because of DeAndre Ayton? Or is there any conceivable chance of something crazy like that happening?
Yeah, no, cross them off the list completely, and just
now
burn it with fire.
Is there anyone else? Because that's the obvious one to me. But is there anyone else, positions 1 through 4, kind of getting crossed off your list immediately for obvious reasons that maybe Mike and I don't see?
At this point, no. I think center is the one position they shouldn't use this pick on. Outside of that, it's fair game. Just take the best player available. They have to fit your needs and your system, obviously. And to get back on the Devin Vassell thing, one of the reasons I like him so much is obviously Mike alluded to the Mikal comp, and I actually like that one. I think his measurables are a little bit he has a 3-inch difference in wingspan than Mikal, but he's a very similar archetype where he's just going to be a 3-and-D wing that's just very smart, and he's not going to screw up a lot. And the Suns need that. They need players that just don't screw up and play defense. So I want Suns fans to imagine a point book lineup with Vassell, Mikal, Kelly, and Ayton. The wingspans would just be insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Vassell is one of the few guys actually that we were going to talk about that I already have a strong opinion on. I love the guy. Just to throw the stats to it, 18 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block and a half per 40 minutes. That's what he's averaging as a sophomore. He's got a box plus minus of over 10 as a sophomore, which is very, very good. And statistically, the Mikal comparison kind of fits as well. He's just a great team defender, a good work ethic from what I've read, and a real plug-and-play type of guy. I guess just the defining question there is if you draft Vassell, and I'm all for it if he drops to 10 or if he's available at 10, it brings back point book into the conversation, right? And if you're going to play Vassell at the 2 and Bridges at the 3 and Oubre at the 4, it's unquestionably a very talented defensive lineup. We still haven't quite gotten any indication, I feel like, of just how far this organization is willing to push point book in the future. Because Ricky Rubio, we've made arguments for Rubio as being the team's MVP on this podcast this season, at least I have, with the type of impact he's had and his type of ability to make the players around him better. That's not to say that Devin Booker doesn't still have the ball skills to be this team's point guard in the future, but you are kind of pushing yourself in that direction if you take Vassell. And I know Monty Williams has said he's interested in experimenting with more point book, but do we actually think that that could ultimately be this team's fate in another year or two? I just don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think with Vassell specifically, if you're taking him, it's not like the end of Ricky Rubio by any means, especially because he's not going to be starting right away. You're going to probably just use him off the bench, just his wing depth, and that's something they desperately need. I wrote about this on Bright Side of the Sun. Just right now they need a versatile wing that can cover, because whenever Cam, Kelly, and Mikal, if one of those guys are missing or 2 of them are, you saw last year, the bench, the 3-guard lineup, please, I my eyes. I never want to see that again. So that's where Vassell comes into play. He'll just be an ultimate glue guy. Like you said, best team defender in the entire class. You can run him in stints with Booker at point guard, but also use him in the second unit. And I think he has some underrated off the dribble shooting that doesn't get talked about enough. Kind of like Mikal with his playmaking, how that's been kind of flown under the radar a little bit, and he's shown flashes. I've seen the same with Vassell with his jumper. If he can put together 1 or 2 dribble moves off the dribble, then his value is going to really skyrocket.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question for you, because that's, you were saying at the beginning, that's how you evaluate talent, right? Is guys who can attack closeouts. And Vassell, the only weakness maybe that I would point at, he has a pretty low free throw rate and hasn't traditionally been maybe one of those guys that's attacked in that way. So what do you see as his ceiling? Is he just a plug-and-play 3-and-D prototypical guy that's getting drafted a little bit higher than most of those guys would because it's a weak class, or do you see kind of high starter level potential out of him?
Yeah, I think he's just pretty much a high floor guy. His ceiling, I don't think he has like the highest ceiling. He obviously has some limitations, like you mentioned. He's not really seeking out contact. He doesn't attack enough, and he doesn't really have a quick first step. So he's going to really rely on his length to shoot over guards and stuff like that. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you're taking him top 10 and he's going to just be a prototypical 3-and-D wing, then it'll be good value in this specific class. But in a typical draft, this isn't someone you want to draft until about, probably the 9 to like 12 range, I would say.
Yeah, right where the Suns are picking. And I think I've just gotten to the point with the draft, and I think I'll preface everything with I'm not a draft guy, but I can't watch
the Bill Simmons
of
draft analysis here.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we have guests. But I just feel like if you have the feel on defense, the real feel for the game on defense, that means that you're likely a high effort player willing to put in the work to get better. It also usually says that a player in college, if they're already in that position, that means that they already understand what makes them good as a player. They usually understand their place, their role. And with Devin Vassell, he's also known as somebody that's a pretty good passer for his position as well. And those are two things usually that means they have a good feel for the game. Those are things that are hard to teach. You can't teach effort, and passing is difficult. You can teach passing, but as we've seen with guys like TJ Warren and Kelly Oubre, if you don't have it, you're probably not going to have it at any point in your career, at least not at a super high level. And I just feel like guys like that, generally, if you pick them, it's just usually a good pick because they're not ever going to be bad, or it's rare, or it's more rare that they're going to be bad. Yeah. Now, there is a player that we have to talk about because people are comparing him to Amari Stoudemire.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we got to talk about this guy.
Yeah. And I do think that if you're a Suns fan, maybe if you're a more casual Suns fan, and I know none of them are listening to this podcast, but if you are a more casual Suns fan, you're looking at the Suns and you're saying, okay, Dario Saric is probably gone. That means the biggest hole in the starting lineup, even if you like the Mikal Bridges, Kelly Oubre forward lineup, is power forward. And they just sort of look at, well, who's the best power forward, right? Who's the best power forward? It must be Obi Toppin. He's compared to Amari Stoudemire. Amari Stoudemire, who, by the way, right now would still be a center in the NBA, for the record, is technically a power forward when he was in the NBA. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about Obi? Where is he on your list, and do you think that the Suns should take him in that range if say, Devin Vassell's off the board, for example, or Tyrese Maxey is off the board?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of those comparisons. And this goes back to like my whole like philosophy in scouting is like it's really important to watch full games of players, because if you're just watching highlights or just clips and stuff like that, then you're going to kind of get the wrong idea of them.
Can I just quickly interject, because it's perfect you said that? So I looked up Obi Toppin on YouTube, and the top most viewed video for Obi Toppin is a video from ESPN. It says, quote, the title is Obi Toppin's highlights prove he is a top 5 NBA prospect.
Jesus.
So that's exactly where we're at.
Highlights. That's all you need.
Yep. So continue.
Yeah, no, that's very accurate. But I think the thing with him, like he's obviously going to be, his offense is something that I don't think anyone's questioning. He's going to be a 3-level scoring big. I buy the shot, and he's a supreme like vertical athlete. Like you've probably seen some of his dunks. Obviously, he led college basketball in dunks, and I just like his finishing and his soft touch like around the rim. So I think offensively he's going to add value for sure. But the main question with him is obviously the defense. It's not just like, so his lateral movement it's like painful to watch. He's just kind of like hunched over, and like he just gets lost. His defensive awareness is pretty bad too. So I think that's going to be something that NBA teams are going to target. And when you have Devin Booker on your roster and you're trying to mask, his defensive deficiencies, you're going to, if you take someone like Toppin, then that's just kind of adding to the problem. And I don't see that being a very smart long-term investment. Although I do think he's going to be one of those players that he'll put up numbers, and I'm just not sure if the value is going to translate at the level you're going to need it to.
Do you believe in his jump shot?
I do. I think he'll actually. I don't think he's going to be like an elite 3-point shooter or anything like that, but I think he'll be able to at least, hit one every now and then.
68% true shooting is pretty fucking nuts. I mean, that's really high level, and he put all three of those together. He was hitting his free throws, he was hitting his threes. But I guess that's the thing, right? So like, if the biggest advantage to Toppin is going to be this explosive athlete who's great in transition and is like a pick and roll scorer, the Suns already have that in DeAndre Ayton. Like, DeAndre Ayton's already the finisher of the team, and I guess the defining question for me is, like, you look at him on paper, and he really does kind of look like Amari Stoudemire in a lot of ways. But is there room in 2020 for a team to have two players at power forward and center who are so reliant on pick and roll finishing as, like, their mode of offense, as their mode of generating offense? And if there isn't like, if Toppin's only way of succeeding at the next level is to, say, play up at the 5 and play small ball, well, aren't you just telling us, Brandon, that he doesn't have the defensive capabilities to really do that, right?
I actually think he'd be better off playing center on defense, but the issue with that, it's still going to be very bad. Like, he's not strong enough to guard, like, actual centers, so it's kind of an issue. But as far as, like, I just think on the perimeter, in switch situations, and just anytime he's on the perimeter, he's going to get completely attacked, and that's something that I don't think in today's game that you can rely on. He's like a tweener in, like, the wrong way. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah,
that's interesting. I think that's just one of those guys that's a certain kind of Suns fan is going to attach themselves to, and then be very disappointed when the Suns pass up Obi Toppin. So that's something that we can look out for.
He's someone that is going to, I think, team context is going to be very important for him. Like, if you plug him next to a center that's, like, mobile and can, switch and kind of cover for him and protect the rim, then he'll be fine. I just don't like this fit in particular in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. Since we already are at almost 25 minutes here, I want to give you a chance of just picking 5 players that you think could fall in the Suns range, that Suns fans who are unfamiliar with these players like me could go on YouTube and watch some highlights of at the very least. And then we'll have you back on, I think, closer to the draft, because I think this conversation is going to be ongoing for a while. If you had to pick 5, who would, and obviously I think you have 2 already picked with Tyrese Maxey and Devin Vassell. Who else would you pick?
Yeah, so Maxey and Vassell. Tyrese Halliburton's another one.
Yes, dying to talk about that guy.
Yeah, this guy is he's a high-level catch-and-shoot shooter. He's from deep range, too. Just elite court vision and passing. He has some deficiencies as well with, he's not going to really be an off-dribble shooting threat, and the weak frame. He really needs to add some, like, muscle. But
7-foot wingspan, though.
Yeah, no, yeah. He's a long boy. So I think he would fit right in. Get like 1 year off the bench behind Rubio and just kind of let him add strength and run the second unit. I think he plays well off the ball too, so he could help. He would share, like, playmaking duties with Book. Another guy, Killian Hayes, huge fan of him. If he's actually there at 10 and the Suns pass on him, I will never forgive them. He's just a sensational passer. He hits off a live dribble, and he can make passes from all 3 levels on the court. And go ahead.
No, I just want to say I can sell Killian Hayes to Mike, even if he doesn't know anything about Killian Hayes, with just one comparison. Killian Hayes in 2018, I look back in an interview, asked who he models his game after, as kind of this lefty, crafty guard, and he answered with Manu Ginobili. And, I know you love Manu, Mike, so if you're looking for a player like that, I don't think it's actually a perfect comparison by any means, but that's kind of what he's going for as this all-around type guard.
I love it.
Yeah, so I like his combination of just the size and obviously the lefty, as you mentioned, with the whole Manu thing. But yeah, just his ability to score from anywhere on the court and make passes from anywhere on the court with that size is just a very unique combination. He's not super athletic or anything, but I think he's just super crafty and shown some step back shooting ability as well. So there's some flashes where you're like, this guy's going to be really good. And I hope he's there at 10, and I hope the Suns draft him, but if not, oh well. And is that 4?
That
I
is
think
4.
So, yes.
You got one more. There's one prospect I'm dying to ask you about, but I don't know if you're gonna include him here.
I'm trying to think. So I would have said Denny, but I think he'll be gone before they pick, just based off like NBA intel.
That's what I was going to ask about. But choose your fifth first. I do want to know about Denny though.
Gotcha. I would say someone that the Suns would probably. I'm not a huge fan of this fit personally, but he's someone that I could see them taking. It would be Cole Anthony out of UNC. I do like his shooting. I think he's going to be a legitimately good shooter because he has versatility like on and off the ball. And he's a very good rebounder for a point guard. Like the main thing with him is he's not a good passer at all. Like, which I mean, if you're a big fan of the whole point book thing, then he could be a good fit offensively. There's questions about his defense, but overall, he had a really disappointing year at UNC, and it would just be a complete upside play. But he's someone I could see James Jones taking. Just he loves ACC players.
Oh, speaking of which, before I ask you the other question, so let's say the Suns are drafting at 10, right? Well, last year they didn't take any of the players at 11 who were projected to go there. Is there a player like 25th to 50th on your mock draft who you could just see James Jones saying "fuck it" and taking them 10th? Who you could identify?
There's two of them actually. I've had this nightmare. It's reoccurring. So. Now these players aren't that bad. It's just not a good value at 10. But I would say Aaron Nesmith from Vanderbilt. He's the best shooter in this class, I would say. But outside of that, like no one knows what else he's going to do pretty well. A little bit older too, so it kind of fits that prototype.
Yep.
And then you got Sadiq Bey out of Villanova, who I actually do like him as like a mid to late first round type prospect. But if you're taking him 10, that's just a crazy reach.
Okay,
Sam, you got one more question?
Yeah, just sell me on Denny real quick, because just for the background context, right? Last time the Suns had a forward that they drafted, high from Maccabi Tel Aviv, a foreign player. It didn't work out too well, and I try not to rely too much on stats, but especially with a guy like Denny, I haven't seen too much tape, and just looking at the stats, I know this isn't always fair with European players because they, the way that you get minutes there is different, but he averaged 4 points, 2.5 rebounds, 1.2 assists per game. He shot 44% from the field, 28% from deep. He's being advertised as this 6'9" kind of versatile forward who has good ball skills and can do things like run the pick and roll. I just feel like I've heard this story before. And I know that's ignorant from me because I'm an ignorant person when it comes to the draft. So just sell me on why is this not the next Dragan Bender?
Yeah, no, that's a very fair concern. I'm sure a lot of Suns fans will, anytime they see Maccabi, they're going to have flashbacks. But he's a tremendous passer for his size, and his court vision's insane. He moves really well, has a plus handle as well. So I think from a fluidity standpoint, at his size, he could be a second engine on an offense that just makes smart decisions. And the main differentiator for me and someone like a Dragan Bender is he's shown a lot more flashes of star potential than Dragan ever did, and he's super competitive, and he gives a damn. He's got an edge to him, and I think that's really important as well. He's a hard worker from everything I've read about him, and obviously the poor free throw and 3-point numbers are worrisome, but he's got really nice mechanics on his shot, and that's what it's going to come down to. If that's his swing skill, if he can shoot, he's going to be a really dynamic small ball four in the NBA today. But if you can't shoot, there's still some value in just his playmaking and his ability to just grab the ball and just lead a transition, stuff like that.
All right, that's going to wrap up our draft conversation for now. I think first of all, there's a bunch of players that we didn't really even talk about that we could talk about more in the future, but I think that gives us a good starting point for now. Players to sort of look up online and catch up on for people who are not into it as much. And for people who are, I think you have a good idea of how Brandon feels, and then a little bit of an idea about how Sam and I feel. Let's take a quick break, and we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about this The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, a little bit with Brandon. So we'll be right back. With currently no NBA, NHL, or MLB, you might think there's nothing to bet on. Well, you'd be wrong. Our exclusive partner, Bet Online, still has hundreds of events, games, and props to wager on. From their online casino to poker and blackjack, they're bringing Vegas to you. Missing the NFL? No problem. BetOnline has live daily Madden NFL 20 simulations you can bet on. You can still bet on Survivor, Big Brother, American Idol, stock prices, and even the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. All open 24 hours a day and all online. Go to betonline.ag and use the promo code BLUEWIRE to join today and receive your new welcome bonus. BetOnline, your online wagering solution. Guys, looking to last longer and go a few extra rounds? Go to BlueChew.com. BlueChew.com has the first ever chewable that brings your performance in the bedroom to another level. They've got the same active ingredients that are in Viagra and Cialis, so you know they work. And since they're chewable, they work faster. You can take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach. Plus, you don't need to go to the doctor's office or spend time waiting in the pharmacy line. Blue Chew's online physician is free of cost, and once approved, your order ships straight to your door in discreet packaging. Here's a great deal for you guys. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first order free when you use promo code BLUEWIRE. Just pay $5 shipping. Again, that's BLUECHEW.com, promo code BLUEWIRE. All right, there is sort of one kind of sporting event type thing happening that people are watching on ESPN, and that is The Last Dance, which is a docu-series about Michael Jordan and what was sold to me as a documentary about the 97-98 season, which was Michael Jordan's final season as a Chicago Bull, and ended up being more of sort of a retrospective on Michael Jordan's career as a whole. And we're following that now. And I think it's, first of all, I will say just right off the top, I think it's very good. I think it's really interesting to watch all this footage. And I think, although I was around and watching the NBA at that time, I did not have this level of understanding of the things that were happening in the NBA. And so far, I'm really enjoying it. And I just wanted to take a little bit of time to talk to you guys about it, because I know that other people are watching it as well. And it feels almost like sports, where we can all kind of have a conversation together. Brandon, I know you're watching. What have you thought about the documentary so far?
Oh, I think it's been awesome. It's been a breath of fresh air. Obviously, like, the NFL draft was a nice little breather as well, but this has definitely lived up to the hype, I would say, and I've really enjoyed it.
Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, as the resident baby of the podcast who doesn't know anything about the NBA pre-2000, it's I'll echo Brandon's sentiments. It's been a breath of fresh air for 2 hours each Sunday night to kind of be able to plug into the Twitter timeline and just see it, zipping by as if it's some sort of live game, and that's really nice to see. As for the production itself, really sharply edited. I do feel like, to talk seriously about it, that I already had a decent amount of knowledge about the guys like Jordan and Pippen, but there are some added perspectives that I'm getting now that I've never seen before. There are also some missing perspectives here. There are some really interesting storylines that, kind of for obvious reasons, haven't been fully explored. Like, for me, at least in the first 4 episodes, one of the most interesting things is the looming presence of Jerry Krause. Hasn't really been explored by this documentary, and that's one of the most interesting things there, because he's kind of the antagonist to all this. With the way that the players have banded in their message of Krause breaking up the team. Now, obviously, Krause is dead, so they can't talk to him. But I do think it would be just a little bit more interesting if they could somehow get someone in Jerry's camp, if such a person out there exists, to explain and flesh out his motives behind doing what he did a little bit more. Because that's one of the stories that, me as a kid, I never knew about. Like, I just never knew about the backstory behind The Last Dance. And the message that we've been given to this point about it is that Jerry had this ego. He didn't want to compete with Michael because of his ego. He wanted more credit. It's believable to me that could be the whole story behind it, but it also kind of, like, if this were a movie, I would tell you that that's not a fully three-dimensional, fleshed-out character. So part of me is just left a little bit unsatisfied with that, just, like, wanting to know if there's really more digging to be done there.
What's funny, two crazy things about Jerry Krause I think that they've covered in this documentary so far. Openly admitting that they were considering trading Scottie Pippen while he was still on the team, which is nuts. Of course,
can you imagine Twitter back then?
But
yeah, you do that. Of course, you do that. But like we all know, the song and dance for general managers is to say, no, we weren't planning on trading Scottie Pippen.
Not all
of course,
us.
people. People call.
Not all general managers know that.
Well,
Ryan
obviously.
McDonough didn't know that. I was going to ask you guys if Jerry Krause is like the original Ryan McDonough with a better draft record. Because in watching the old interviews with him, the mannerisms, the cold-hearted kind of calculated way that he maneuvers around these questions from the press, it reminded me so much. It's as if Ryan learned. I know Ryan learned from Danny Ainge, but it almost felt like he learned from Jerry Krause. Like that's his idol, who he was looking up to, who he was watching.
Yes, and I think you'll like the point I'm going to make here. The other crazy thing that he did was just sort of publicly announcing that it would be the last year that Phil Jackson was going to coach the team, and it made it sort of a public thing, which I thought was what's the point of it other than I guess Phil could say it himself, and then it's out there. But I did notice there was one person in his camp that tried to at least say the good things that he was doing, and that person was former general manager of the Phoenix Suns, Steve Kerr. And I just thought it was interesting. There were moments where Steve Kerr would say something like, well, to his credit, yada, 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 or he did this one thing, which I thought was really smart, yada, yada, yada. And all I could picture was Sean Marion just slowly being shipped off to Miami. Well, old man Shaq comes back to Phoenix, and Steve Kerr just sort of admitting, hey, the general manager job is hard, because he wasn't very good at it. He had one lucky year in that 2010 year, but that was sort of the last dance of Steve Nash, if you will. And I just noticed Steve Kerr is sort of the one guy with general manager experience on that team, as far as I know, besides, of course, Michael Jordan, trying to represent Jerry Krause in a more sympathetic light, at least a little bit. I did want to talk about just sort of the experience watching Michael Jordan as a kid. Now, I'm 33 years old. I was born in 1987. So I was able to see Michael Jordan play live on NBC, which is where games used to play. And I remember watching Michael Jordan. One of the first memories I had was for basketball was the 93 finals. I was 6 years old, so it's not like I have these vivid memories of it, but I do remember Michael Jordan feeling like a superhero. And I think that this documentary represents him in an interesting way, in that you're sort of able to see his thoughts on things. You're able to see his emotions on things, whether even if it's just anger or laughing. I think he's had moments where he seems like kind of a funny guy, which I never really pictured for Michael Jordan. Brandon, you're a little bit younger than I am. Do you have any memories of watching Michael Jordan live, or did you sort of experience it all either on the internet or in highlights on ESPN or TV? And what is it like watching this documentary for you?
Yeah, so I do remember vaguely as a kid watching him growing up, kind of towards the tail end of his career. Like, obviously it wasn't the same, but I've done... I feel like before this even came out, I had a pretty good understanding of his greatness, and I've seen a ton of film and the whole IMAX movie that came out. I can't remember what it was called back in the day, but yeah, it's been really cool. I think especially for people that have like no knowledge, firsthand knowledge, like the younger generation, getting this documentary at this time is pretty cool. Just because it's going to open up some eyes and just kind of put things in perspective and just see a different era of basketball.
Sam, you didn't get to see Michael Jordan at all,
No.
Really?
No, I did not.
So what is it like for you? Do you think, does it just feel like old guys reminiscing to you? Do you find it interesting?
No, I certainly find it interesting, and I have the utmost respect for Michael Jordan, the basketball player. And I think it's been a really good series. Yeah, I mean, as someone whose my first memories of basketball were from the early 2000s, I'm from New York, so like the first time I really remember catching an NBA Finals is when the Nets were dominated back-to-back 2 years in a row. And then obviously a little bit later I started watching the Suns when Steve Nash came to town. But no, watching this has been... I think the Bulls are a fairly easy team to root for back then, coming from my kind of younger perspective. What catches me up a little bit is, and kind of feels more like just old guys reminiscing about a bunch of random shit, is with the talk about like the bad boy Pistons. That's where really the brunt of this argument of... they don't play defense anymore in the NBA today, really starts to kind of take a firm hold. And, I'll have like I'm still going into work every day personally. So I had a long conversation with an older guy today, probably about 50 years old, at my office, just talking with sort of glowing respect for the way that guys like Rick Mahorn and Bill Laimbeer used to play defense for the Pistons, and that if you were going to come in and challenge them, they were just going to hit them. Guys just got hit back then, and I don't know, I guess it's mostly that kind of mindset that's so foreign to me as someone who's grown up in the age of spacing with the NBA being played the way it is today.
Yeah, it's hard to... I still don't really look at that as defense. I guess in a sense it is. It's just fouling a guy.
I don't look at it. My
beat.
problem with it, and again, this is, it's just a byproduct of the way I was raised playing basketball, but I don't look at it as skill. I don't evaluate it in the same way that I do. There are ways that guys today kind of take advantage of the rules a little bit beyond what they should. Harden's double step back travel or whatever being a prime example of it. The way that guys like Giannis and Harden and even Curry to some extent too, take advantage of foul rules and really get to the free throw line a lot more than perhaps they should. But it doesn't. There's still a certain skill associated with their live ball dribble and their ball handling abilities that just isn't. I don't know. I just don't see the same skill in that level of defense. And, I've been roasted for that opinion before, but I just don't see it no matter how hard I try. That's not to say that those Pistons teams were bad. I think they were very good. I think there are very admirable traits about Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars and Dennis Rodman with his rebounding ability. I will say, just a quick side note, Dennis Rodman going on that aside, talking about when he was on the Bulls, or I don't even remember what era it was, but when he was talking about just taking his teammates into the gym, and it was when he was a young kid, I think, and just watching the way the ball comes off the rim and really learning each player's specific tendencies so that he could become such an infinitely better rebounder. Anecdotes like that are really cool to hear. But overall, there's a reason those Pistons teams are the bad guys.
Yeah, I think maybe my favorite part of the documentary so far was the shot of Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman talking on the bench, just strategically talking about when to switch. Just because you never really get that kind of footage. When ESPN or TNT does the sort of huddles, it's always like, play hard, make sure to contest that shot. It's never the really interesting strategic stuff because they don't want to air that. That's just something that's more private for the team. But to see Jordan and Rodman talking through switching late in the shot clock on specific players because of a distinct advantage that they had, that was, I think, one of the more fascinating things that I've seen so far. But I do agree with you. I think here's what I'll say about the Pistons. The Pistons were the best defensive team based on the rules that they had back then. And I think in general, and the style of basketball that people played, that made them very good defenders, and that made them excellent at what they were doing. I think that defense now is much harder and takes more skill, just in general, just because of the way that the NBA is played. It's a higher effort type of defense. If you watch, to me, one of the pinnacles of watching a defensive team is the LeBron-era Miami teams because of the high level of effort that they constantly played with. They would ice, as we all know what icing and pick and rolls is, so they would collapse into the paint and then just sprint out on shooters. And basically what they did is maybe not a sound defensive strategy. It's what the Suns did as well, but the high level of athletes that they had, they were capable of running back out to shooters. And that level of effort, when I watch old clips of basketball, or even from what I remember of watching basketball, nothing really happened the way that it happened after that Miami team or after that Boston team, I think, which sort of changed defenses just because of the amount of shooters that you shoot now. So it takes more effort to cover more players.
So then the obvious conclusion is you think Draymond Green is a better defender than Dennis Rodman. And I'm gonna say that you said that online, and we're gonna see what happens to you.
No, I think if Dennis Rodman was placed in today's NBA, he would probably be better than Draymond Green. It's just that within the confines, and this is actually, I'm glad this came up, this is the entire problem with the debate on who the greatest player of all time is, because these guys are almost playing different sports. The way that the game has changed so dramatically in a long time. It's not like it was a short period of time. It was a relatively long period of time. It's impossible to say who was the greatest. I think Michael Jordan was the greatest player that played in his generation by a lot. I also think that LeBron James is the greatest player that played in his generation by a lot. And if you want to debate which one of those two guys is better all time, there is no answer to that. And I think that's almost why people like this debate, because they can choose what their answer is and they can argue it ad infinitum, forever and ever and ever. And that doesn't make it interesting to me in any way. I think what's interesting is learning why these guys dominated in the eras that they did, and that's more fun. And I think that's what this documentary allows us to do. But Brandon, what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on just sort of different eras and even on the LeBron-Jordan debate?
Yeah, no, Mike, I think you made a really good point just about comparing different eras. Like, anytime you're evaluating a player, I think you have to just keep it strictly in the confines of their era. You can't really take them out of that. I don't think it's fair. So I like what you alluded to, saying it's, you can't really discredit MJ for playing when he did, and you can't give LeBron credit for playing where he does now. But I will say, though, I think the skill level is dramatically increased, as you guys have alluded to, and just there's more to worry about on the court. Like, back then you don't have to worry about Steph Curry like pulling up from 40 feet. You're just kind of. I think defense was a little bit. I want to say easier because it was a lot more physical, but there was just less to worry about on the court, and I think that's something you have to take into account. But at the end of the day, I don't really like comparing eras or players from different eras in totality with like some. Definitive statement one way or another. But, yeah. Two
things. One, if either of you guys ran ESPN, if you ran the network, ratings would be abysmal. Because is it stupid to compare players in different eras? Yes. Is it human nature to want to know who the best player in the history of the sport is? Also, yes. So, I'm right there with you guys, but I just don't think we're ever going to get away from that conversation. It's going to continue to haunt us for as long as we live. The second thing, though, with your point on skill sets, it was getting funny to me because it was like that fourth episode where they're really starting to talk about Phil Jackson. You could really have invented a drinking game based around the triangle offense and the number of times they start bringing up the triangle. And it's something we've heard about a million times. But then, of course, you fast forward 20 years later and Phil's trying to institute that same triangle offense into what was, at that point, a quasi-modern NBA. And it failed. It failed, especially with the Knicks just a few years ago. So, just more evidence of how skilled the top players in the league are today, the types of options that you have to guard, and the level to which offensive schemes have also improved. I mean, could you even imagine running a triangle offense in today's NBA? And how many games would you even win if you did that? Could you even possibly build a championship caliber team with that? Unless you had a team of, LeBron, Giannis, and Harden all on the same roster.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think, obviously, the teams that win in today's game in any era really is just teams that adapt and that make changes before anyone else does. And that's what the triangle was at the time back then. But now it's just become so redundant, and there's so many more options that are just more efficient and get results. So I do think it was pretty foolish to try to bring it in like any sort of modern era of basketball. But at the time it was innovative. And I think, Golden State is like a good example now of just, they kind of changed the game. So every generation there's going to be a team that kind of makes that breakthrough. No idea what the next one's going to be, but looking forward to it.
It's the Houston Rockets, right?
Houston Rockets.
They push it. They push it to the extreme. Actually,
James
in a
Harden will be
sense,
center by next year.
I think it's the Bucks. I mean, they play. Nobody really talks about how they play like this analytics basketball. I think because they have a guy that's just sort of pounding it in the paint, but they have like 7-footers that shoot threes constantly, and that's what it is. I think there is a fun thought experiment, though, of picturing what Michael Jordan would look like in today's NBA if you did sort of surround him with high-level shooters that play defense, which is kind of a newer thing in the NBA compared to in the 90s. It's like someone like Steve Kerr, he was like a pitch hitter almost. They took him in and out, offense, defense, and all he did was shoot, and he wasn't really capable of doing a lot else. Now, he was a relatively good ball handler. He was good offensively in general, but it's not like having Danny Green or somebody like that who can play both ends of the ball a little better. You surround him with guys like that, it's pretty amazing to picture. And in the same sense, it's actually pretty fascinating to picture LeBron James playing in the 90s where illegal defense existed. You couldn't guard space. Like if you can't guard space, that means you can't get to the spot before LeBron James, just period. And that means that he's getting to the rim as much as he possibly wants. And the Jordan rules are now the LeBron rules. And just picturing a train going down into the paint is kind of a fascinating thing. Now, does that mean that you can rule one way or the other? No, these are just special thought experiments. Nobody can actually decide how good they would be in any era. It's just kind of fun, I think, to think about. Sam, you have any other thoughts on that documentary?
No, that's about it. I'm really excited for episode 5 and 6, though. I'm also curious to see, because Jordan had the opinion that, I think he came out and said something before this aired about how people were going to see him in a bad light after. And I'm wondering if that's kind of just him being overly paranoid about it, because, frankly, he should already know what his reputation is as a person among the public. It's that he's an asshole. But I'm wondering if that's coming, if that's still coming in this.
Can we talk about how he's the original D-Lo snitch?
I
thought that was funny.
On Burrell, yeah. About the alcoholic thing? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. When he was on camera, he's like, "Don't say this. My parents are going to watch this." And he's just like,
"Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Funny.
That's the thing about Jordan. I mean, I know it's apples to oranges, right? But like here he is whining, bitching about Isaiah Thomas not not greeting them at the end of the game, and talking about sportsmanship, and then in the same breath, kind of later on the plane, he's calling his teammate an alcoholic. Now I know it's all in good fun, but like he really, you just get the sense that he's going to push people past their limit in a bad way sometimes, and maybe that's competitive spirit, but you got to wonder if he could have just toned that down a little bit. I don't know.
Well, I think they should have re-aired the clip of the person asking him for his autograph after he was complaining about Isaiah Thomas, where he just stared at his assistant like, "Get this fucker out of my face."
That's exactly
I have a question for you guys, and Mike and Sam are not ready for this, so it's off the top of the head. If there is someone on the Suns, it could be past or present, that would get the whole Rodman 48 hours in Vegas, who would it be?
Oh,
past or present? Gerald Green, if it's past, for sure.
That's a good one.
That's a really interesting
Or
question.
Michael Beasley.
Ooh, yeah.
Gerald Green or Mike, like who are the biggest wild cards? But
I think the Twins would just go together.
Well, I think the Twins would go together. See, if it was Beasley, they would leave him there. They're saying we don't need Bees to win.
I just feel like Beasley would be like asleep on a couch playing N64, like with the menu of like
but GoldenEye
just playing over and over. How about PJ Tucker? I mean, he had a super extreme DUI.
Yeah, but PJ should have the common sense, I feel like, to get back.
It's just none of them interacted with celebrities in the like Carmen Electra. That's like, I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Former son,
he dated Madonna.
Robert Horry.
Yeah, Kelly Oubre needs to step his game up, man.
Yeah, I mean, Kelly Oubre would be fascinating if he. I would like to see. I think more than anything else, the take that I saw on Twitter, which is this entire documentary should be about Dennis Rodman's 48 hours in Las Vegas. That is the correct take, because that would be a more fascinating documentary than anything else made, regardless of what Bill Simmons thinks about that. But let's let you go, Brandon. Sam and I are going to come back and cover some calls and text messages that we received on our Hot Take Hotline. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for talking about this documentary with us, and of course, giving us this introduction to the 2020 NBA draft. You have a draft guide that you are actually putting out through the Zona Sports account. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. I'm actually working on a release date, hopefully in early May, for the updated version. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, definitely do that. And if you don't follow him already, what's your Twitter handle?
It's just at AZ Sports Zone on Twitter. Yeah, and you can check out my work on Bright Side of the Sun as well.
Wait, you write for Bright Side of the Sun? That's crazy. Yeah. I actually write for Bright Side of the Sun. I don't know if you knew that. Although not as much these days. Dave is probably going to yell at me. But Brandon, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for all you do, man. Some of the best Suns analysis out there. So
appreciate that. Love your guys' pod. Thanks for having me on.
So today, Sam and I got a really weird message on our Hot Take Hotline, which was just a picture of an older lady sent to us. It was clearly a mistake, but
what do you mean clearly a mistake?
I mean, I guess maybe it's possible she's a fan of the podcast. She doesn't fit into our demographics, I don't think, but she did send us a photo, and it reminded me that we have a Hot Take Hotline that we always forget about. So I put it out on Twitter right before we recorded this podcast. I said, hey, if you have anything you want us to talk about, you have an hour to send it to us. And we got a few things just to remind the people. 530-433-4368. That's 530-433-4368. That's our phone number. This is a 24-hour-a-day hotline that you can call
or send us pictures.
Send us photos, apparently.
Of your grandmother.
Or text. Yeah, you can text us as well. And in fact, we got a few texts. Thanks to everyone who texted us the funny stuff or the serious stuff. It's all good. And we got a question that I wanted to cover, a few questions, but this one's a text message. I'm going to read it out loud. It says, hey brothers, do you guys think we should stick with the starting 5 from the end of the season? If so, who should we trade for / sign? And if not, like, what should we do, I think, is the ending of that one. My first thought is, I'll talk about it quickly. Yes, I desperately want to see that starting lineup for next season. I desperately want to see it. I think that it feels more like a modern team than anything else that we can get. I think that there's other possibilities. Aaron Gordon, people are bringing up the possibility of Aaron Gordon. No thanks. I like the idea of Mikal Bridges and Kelly Oubre a little bit more. Of course, Kelly Oubre is coming back from injury, so it's sort of dependent on that. But I really liked it a lot, and I would like to see a lot more of it going forward. And if we can figure out the bench, that's a great possibility for me. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. That lineup with Kelly at the 4 worked. It objectively worked statistically, eye test, you name it, and we got to keep that together. Unfortunately for Dario, I think his time in Phoenix is more than likely over. He's not a bad player, but going forward, it's all about it's less about talent on paper, which is, I think, maybe where fans and where the Suns themselves have gotten lost a little bit over the past couple of years, and it's more about just optimizing roles. What the Suns did from 2018 to 2019 is they took all of these skill sets where they were the absolute worst in the league. Shooting, they were the worst in the league. Playmaking, worst in the league. Rebounding, and they made the incremental steps to basically go from awful to okay. Now what we need to ask them to do again is find the right role players to go from okay to actually good. You know, Ricky Rubio improved the playmaking to a certain extent. There's still more work that can be done. Cam Johnson improved the shooting tremendously, but there's still a lot more work that can be done there as well. And you know, defensively there are improvements that can be made too. So what I will say is I think it's very unlikely. First of all, it's a weak free agency class. I think it's very unlikely that the Suns really make a bid for any player to come and be instantly slotted into their starting 5, or potentially they could find a starter, but to instantly be one of their core pieces. But I think what they could do is use their cap space to find a couple of role players who really are the right fit and kind of give them the perfect combination of skills to keep building on what they've already been building.
Yeah, I think one of the advantages of that starting lineup is at least 4 of the 5 will continue to get better in the NBA, which makes it a viable long-term starting 5, regardless of size. And those of you who've listened to this podcast for a long time know that at least I, and then at points Sam, have been asking for that since the beginning of the season. So we're happy to see it, and we'd like to see it more going forward. Let's listen to a voicemail.
Mike and Sam, this is Luke. Fellas, I love the podcast. I'm still tuning in, even with no games being played. My hot take is that if, and I hope we do, if we take a point guard in this upcoming draft, I believe that maybe halfway through the season, in this upcoming season, that point guard will overtake Ricky Rubio in his second contract year. And I think that point guard is going to turn out pretty well for us going into Rubio's third year. Maybe that'll be Killian Hayes or possibly Halliburton. But that's the hot take. Keep up the good work, fellas.
That is a hot take.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, appreciate it, Luke. Thank you for being a loyal listener even during these trying times. Hope everything is good with you and your fam. But yeah, no, it is a hot take. And you want to know also why it's a hot take is because I guess one of the advantages of there being no basketball right now is Ricky Rubio didn't sustain an injury, but he only played 57 games this year, and he didn't go to the playoffs either. That's a lighter load for a guy who has traditionally had such a heavy load. He also only played, I think, like 30 minutes. Okay, he played 32 minutes per game. That's not nothing. But look, I definitely understand where he's coming from. Rubio's 29. He's been in the league for a long time at this point, and there's definitely potential that he starts to slow down. But given that this was likely going to be a shorter season, I am hoping that that's a little bit further out in the future now. I'm hoping he still has one more good year in him, and that maybe his third year of that contract is where we actually start to see the slowdown. And by that point, if the Suns do get Killian Hayes, you heard a little bit about Killian Hayes from Brandon on today's episode, heard a little bit about Halliburton, Cole Anthony, point guard as well. LaMelo, obviously, if they rise all the way to the top. Whoever it may be, hopefully that person would be ready to assume the role by year 2. That's the thinking.
I think that there's no chance that Ricky Rubio would lose his starting spot next season. I think in his third year, I think that's a possibility, especially as he ages, and we'll see how that affects his game. But he's just paid too much and has too much control based on that going forward. And I also don't think there's really like a John Morant level player here that will make it sort of necessary to start. And if there is, then you're right. That hot take is right on, and that would be great for the Suns for that to happen.
Well, yeah.
The obvious guys are Halliburton, Killian, and LaMelo, just like you said. And if we could take any one of those guys, that would be nice for the bench. And I just want to say nice for the bench for multiple reasons. Obviously, more playmaking, but also more athleticism. The bench was lacking in athleticism sorely, especially when you moved Mikal Bridges into that starting lineup. Then you have slow guys like Ty Jerome, of course. Elie Okobo, who's fast, but doesn't really have any sort of like burst or athleticism as far as jumping. Any one of those guys that I think would be a better athlete coming off the bench. So I like that idea. But going forward, if they're good enough to take that starting lineup, that would be a really great situation for us.
It would be an amazing situation, but practically speaking, you look at a guy like Killian Hayes or Tyrese Halliburton, where playmaking is such a focal point of why they're highly touted prospects in the first place. Who better to learn from for those guys than taking a little bit more of a passive role in year 1 and learning behind Ricky Rubio? It just makes too much sense to stick them in the second unit in that situation. But look, if they overtake Ricky Rubio in year 1, then they probably look like a future all-star for sure. So that would be really good news for us.
Or the team's really bad.
Or the team is really bad and Ricky Rubio just lost all of his basketball talent, which would suck.
All right, one more, and this is an interesting one, I think.
Hey, Mike and Sam, I want to know if the Suns run it back next year by re-signing Baines and Saric and keep the same team plus their draft pick. What's their record going to be? Are they going to be better, or are they going to be about the same?
Interesting question there. Re-signing Baines and Saric. Here's one thing I will say. The Suns will have to get a really great backup center to make losing Baines worthwhile. He's clearly a great piece for this team on the court, much better than any of us could have anticipated. He appears to be an excellent mentor off the court for DeAndre Ayton. I understand that he's a perfect piece for any contender, and if those contenders come calling, if he's willing to take less money to play on a contender, he's gone. But if it takes a little bit extra money for the Suns to keep him, I think it's worthwhile, especially because I don't really see any big name free agent that's going to eat up the entirety of the Suns cap space going forward. I would like to keep Baines. Saric is gone. I think he's gone. I just don't think he's a starting player on the Suns. He's going to look for a starting position. If he can't find it, he's not going to come crawling back to the team to take a backup big position on the Suns. I think he's going to go somewhere else and try something new.
Especially one where he like sporadically plays 14 minutes a game. They really kind of, I don't know if I'd go so far as saying mistreated Saric this year, but they had no fucking clue how to use him.
Well, it's tough for a guy in a contract year to not have a consistent role. Will the team be better if they just re-signed everybody and went forward with that team? I do think they would be. DeAndre Ayton's going to get better. Devin Booker's likely going to get better. We know for sure Mikal Bridges is going to get better. Depending on Kelly Oubre's injury, he has the drive to get better, so I do believe that he could get better as well, although he had an excellent season for him. And even if he played at that same level, based on his injury history, that would be a huge success for somebody like Kelly Oubre. I do think they would be better, but it would be incrementally. I don't think that's enough to make the playoffs. They need to drastically improve the backup playmaker position in order for them to be in a position to make the playoffs, if nothing else changed.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. They were on pace for 33 wins. Maybe they get up to 37. I don't know. I mean, I think Ayton I think Ayton's going to be the big guy. I think he has the potential out of anyone I can point at on this roster. Where I was so impressed by his defensive jump from year 1 to 2, and I know it was only a 30-game sample size, but he really has the potential to come back next year and drop 22 and 12 and 2 blocks a game with legitimately game-changing defense every night. That would be huge for the Suns. It would make him a bona fide star, potentially an all-star as early as his 3rd season in the league. Everyone else, they're going to make incremental improvements too, but the Suns ultimately aren't going to get anywhere without a little more self-creation. We can't have a repeat of this year where Devin Booker goes to the bench and Ricky Rubio just can't handle it by himself, or vice versa, when Ricky Rubio goes to the bench and the backup point guard situation is just drastically bad. We need more self-creation. Doesn't matter what position that's out of. That could be a 2, a 3, or 4, and we need a more competent backup playmaker to go behind Rubio.
That's right. Thank you to everyone who sent us questions or voicemails. 530-433-4368. Anytime, 24/7. Send us a text message. Send us a photo of your grandmother. Send us a funny meme. Leave us a voicemail with a question for the podcast. It makes us a lot easier for us. Hey, Sam, do you want to do an episode next week?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, we'll be back
next week.
In a week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back next week. We will talk to you later.
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.